slight miscommunication. Just a slight miscommunication. Hello, Canucks fans, and welcome back to another episode of Canucks Conversation, brought to you by the 2024 Toyota BZ4X. The BZ4X is Toyota's brand new all-electric SUV designed to go the distance for you and your family. The BZ4X is packed with Toyota's coolest tech, but it still has that trusty SUV feel you know and love. And even though it's electric, it's capable of effortlessly conquering any terrain. Whether it's rain, snow, mud, or your friends' questionable post-game recaps, the BZ4X will get you through it all. One of us is coming to you from the iconic Wall Center in downtown Vancouver. Looking for your next meeting space? Contact the Wall Center for all your event needs at sales@wallcenter.com. All right, right off the bat, we'll address it. David Quadrilli alongside Harmon Dial. Harmon Dial is the one that is at the Wall Center studio. My mistake, Harm. We had a slight miscommunication. I was in a meeting and I was trying to text about the show, and I accidentally said, okay, let's do in studio, when I really meant the opposite. And I don't know if anybody else, I do this all the time. Not all the time, but it's happened to me before where I'll think one thing and then I'll text the exact opposite thing. So I told you, let's go in studio, thinking I meant to say remote. So you're in studio, I'm remote. My apologies.
It's all good. It is funny though, because I was scrambling to get here on time because I had so many other things going on this early in the morning and in the afternoon. So I'm not gonna lie, remote episode, forget the time driving there and back. It also would have made my like 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. window a lot less stressful.
I apologize. I do apologize. I feel really bad about it. Look, we'll do an episode down the road. I promise. This is how we'll make it even. We'll do an episode down the road where you're remote and I'll be in studio. That's how we'll make it even. We'll call it fair and square.
You don't need to do that. It's fine. It's fine. It happens.
Okay. All right. Right off the hop, this is the Ilya Mikheyev buyout episode. So obviously we're going to talk Ilya Mikheyev buyout. No kicking this can down the road. We're going to talk about it once and for all. But before that, the Lady Byng Award was awarded yesterday to Jacob Slavin, and Elias Pettersson finished as the runner-up. I thought we should quickly touch on this. Our opening segment is brought to you by our friends over at Wendy's. Frozen pucks are awesome when they're in the back of the other guy's net, but that doesn't mean you'd want to eat one, and that's why Wendy's only ever uses fresh Canadian beef that's never seen the inside of a freezer in all of their burgers. Whether you order a Baconator, Dave Single, or even a JBC, you'll only ever find real fresh beef that's juicy and loaded with fresh toppings. So download the Wendy's app, check out the latest deals, and order a burger that's only job is being delicious. Okay, I want to talk about the Lady Byng Harm. Jacob Slavin takes home the award. I'll share my ballot. When I voted, I had Elias Pettersson third place on my ballot, and I had Jacob Slavin number 2. I had Kyle Connor number 1, but the thing I'll kind of focus on is just explaining why I personally had Jacob Slavin ahead of Elias Pettersson on my ballot. Elias Pettersson, of course, finished as the runner-up, but on my ballot, I put Jacob Slavin 2, Elias Pettersson 3rd, and the main reason is just that while Elias Pettersson certainly fit the criteria of playing at a high level and gentlemanly conduct, not taking penalties, that sort of thing, basically the formula of low penalty minutes combined with high play, right? With Jacob Slavin, I voted on him because I'm just really impressed that he didn't take penalties. 1, being a defenseman, but 2, being a defenseman in Carolina, where they play an airtight man-to-man coverage system. Like, any defenseman in the NHL will tell you it's harder to take penalties when that's your defensive system. Because if you lose your man, you're more susceptible to tripping a guy up, getting a stick in a hook or something like that. So I'm really impressed with Jacob Slavin's defensive game this year, and every year really, but the low penalty minutes for Slavin as well. That's ultimately why he won the award, but personally for me, that was why when I put my ballot in, that's why I had Jacob Slavin number 2 and Elias Pettersson number 3.
Yeah, Slavin could be on my Lady Byng ballot, if I can say that correctly, every single year. He, as you mentioned, you're going up against the opposition's best players, and your job isn't to create offense necessarily. It's to shut them down. It's to shut down Connor McDavid, shut down Nathan McKinnon, shut down Austin Matthews, shut down Alex Barkov. To do that on a night in, night out basis, deliver the high end defensive results, even chip in with some offense, and do it without taking penalties is remarkable because it's so taxing to defend down low, to try and hold your gap the right way to break up cycles. And I'm telling you, the line is so fine between aggressive pressure and trying to break plays up. And if you're even a fraction of a step behind, that same sequence resulting in a penalty. So definitely it's the positional factor for me, plus him playing more difficult matchups.
Did you have Pettersson on your ballot?
I think I had him somewhere. I don't remember if it was in like what exact spot in my top 5, but I believe he was in my top 5.
I was looking back because you said, "Oh, Jacob Slavin could be on my Lady Byng every year." Jacob Slavin, I voted on the awards for 3 years now. Jacob Slavin has been on my ballot. I think he's been top 3 in every single ballot I've submitted for the Lady Byng. Certainly a deserving winner. Congrats to Jacob Slavin. But Elias Pettersson finishes as the runner-up. And pull up this tweet from Irf again, Grady. Producer Grady Sass, forgot to shout him out. My apologies. Who's also in studio. But Irf tweeted this out. The Canucks in the Lady Byng voting with the finishing spots for each. So Elias Pettersson, obviously number 2. Brock Besser getting two third place votes, 7 fourth and 7 fifth place votes as well. Ilya Mikheyev. Someone picked Ilya Mikheyev as the criteria being
many people.
Sorry?
Many people, not just one.
5. Yes, 5 people, but 2 specifically had him second place on their ballot. So I gotta look it up because this might be Tobias Bjornfot, maybe not at that level, but it might be something where someone looked up penalty minutes, saw that he only had 4 penalty minutes, which is true. He did only have 4 penalty minutes through 78 games, so that's fair. But 31 points, is that really high level enough play to get second place votes? I don't know. I'm not here to dissect the Lady Byng voting. I didn't have him on my Byng ballot, I can tell you that. But Ilya Mikheyev getting some love from the voters. 2 second place votes, 2 fourth place votes, and 1 fifth place votes. This one, Harm, this is the one I really want to talk about. Thatcher Demko gets a 5th place vote. A goaltender gets a 5th place vote. I'm a goalie guy. What did didn't Marc-Andre Fleury finish in like the top 10 this year? Did I miss a memo where people are going to start voting on goalies for the Lady Byng? Like, yeah, he's a great guy. Marc-Andre Fleury's a great dude by all accounts. But are we really going to start voting goalies for the Lady Byng? I don't know if I'm on board with that personally. I didn't have a goalie on my ballot.
What's more wild to you, the Demko or the Mikheyev? I think it's the Mikheyev for me.
It is Mikheyev, but hey, as somebody who, and for those that don't know the story, as somebody who put Tobias Bjornfot on my ballot when I first voted because I didn't quite understand the criteria, I understand it. I understand people looking at the low penalty minutes. I understand where that would come from, but it's the high level of play. That's the other part. And I think we can all agree on the Ilya Mikheyev buyout episode that Ilya Mikheyev didn't play at a high level this year. So that's our Lady Byng voting segment, and it kind of transitions well into the buyout segment. Do you have anything else? Did you want to say anything else about the Byng? Elias Pettersson finishing runner-up. Anything on the Byng award?
Do you think, this is just like more of a fun question, do you think Rick Tocchet would like it for Canucks forwards to finish higher up in the Byng balloting?
No, I'll take it a step further and say he's going to be telling Thatcher Demko to start two-handing people that are in front of him. Oh, like that. Some of my favorite YouTube compilations are goaltenders just getting angry. Like it's like 8 minutes of goalies being mad, NHL goalies being mad. And you've got just cross checks to the midsection. You've got all this different stuff of goalies just chopping at guys' ankles. I think goalies need to do that a lot more instead of all this flopping. Like goalies flop a lot. I've noticed that a lot more in recent years. Like was it Demko that laid the shoulder into someone? Who was it? It happened not too many years ago. It was either Markstrom or Demko. One Canuck goaltender was playing the puck behind the net and someone came around and they laid the shoulder into him. I think it sounds more like a Markstrom thing to do, but maybe I'm misremembering. I might be misremembering here.
Speaking of just flopping and sportsmanship, diving, things of that nature, I know we've sort of touched on the topic a bunch of times this season, but watching more and more of the playoffs, I think the NHL is getting worse and worse with the diving. And I think the refs, it's infuriating how they call both the embellishment and the actual penalty. Like, what's that accomplishing? That's not actually punishing the guy who embellished. Only call the embellishment if there was a situation where there wasn't really a penalty and a guy dives.
That's the thing. I agree with you, Harm, because you if you call embellishment, it likely means you weren't going to call a penalty in the first place, right? Like it means the first play probably wasn't an infraction. And to really get embellishment out of the game, even if it was an infraction, if you embellish, you're gone. Like you're the one that gets the penalty. You put your team down shorthanded because you embellished. I love that. I love that uh,
Players
ideology for
learn
the
so
refs.
quickly as well. Like you do that once or twice to guys and they'll take notice, especially nobody wants the embarrassment of being the one guy going to the penalty box, especially for an embellishment penalty. There are certain penalties that guys feel more guilty for than others. Embellishment would be way worse than, for example, a hooking penalty for a guy that is trying to prevent a scoring chance, right? That's
Oh,
just
for sure.
embarrassing, right? For your teammates, knowing the reaction that's going to come of it on social media, that would so quickly fix it. Not to mention, when you get away with it, like for example, in the Oilers Canucks series, one guy would sort of maybe embellish or dive a little bit, and they wouldn't even get the embellishment penalty. They'd get away with it. They'd actually, in fact, draw a penalty. And then if you see that happening for an opposition player drawing a penalty successfully that way, then well, it's competitive. Why would you not want to embellish a little bit yourself? Because clearly it's working on the refs.
Yeah, exactly. And you're duping these refs, and the refs that get duped, like Talkit always says it. He's buddies with some of the refs back in his TNT days. He always said it. He said it. He's like, yeah, if I were a ref and I saw a guy, snapping his head or embellishing, I would only call that guy for a penalty, and then I wouldn't give that guy calls next time I see him. And
It is.
hey, maybe that's not a great way to go about things, but it's something that teams are noticing.
Yeah, it is also interesting. You never want to be. Some players take it too far and then they lose the benefit of the doubt. Like Mason Marchment, I don't know if you remember, he took a cross check and it was a legit cross check. Should have been a cross checking penalty. Marchment also got an embellishment call. I think it was Marchment. And that was a pure reputation call. Like just because he's embellished in the past. And it actually should have been just a 2-minute penalty to the opposing player. Marchment shouldn't have gotten it, but that just goes to show that like a lot of players know what the line is and they toe it till the point they don't get that reputation. But also, if and when you do get that reputation, you're never getting the benefit of the doubt again.
Yeah, that's how it works. That's just how it works. That's how it works. Okay, you brought up Marchment. You brought up you brought up the Oilers Stars game. So I think it's a good time. Do you want to do the DFO picks right now? Because
Yeah.
we were on a heater that one day. We got to get back to our winning ways, Harm. We gotta get that $25 Amazon gift card. And folks, you can play yourselves over at games.daily faceoff. You're gonna see us play it right now. You can go play it all playoffs long. And look, like I said, daily winners snag gift cards. And at the end of each week, each round's champs pocket cash. So go prove your knowledge. Go win the daily face-off playoff parlay challenge. Harmon and I were this close, man. This close. We were like so close to winning it earlier this week. It's a Friday afternoon, Harm. We're going to win it right now. Tonight, Oilers, Stars. Who is going to win? Stars are at home. Who do you like here?
Leaning Stars. Or actually, wait, do we know about Tanev's status?
He Pete DeBoer said optimistic. So
Okay.
he's playing. we covered Chris Tanev for years. He's playing.
All right. I'm kind of feeling Dallas. What are you feeling?
I agree. Dallas is the favorite. I'm going with Dallas. Over under, including overtime, it is set at 5.5, with over being the favorite.
Over's been working a lot lately. Do you think it changes as the series progresses?
Nope. I think we stick with over.
All right. Let's do that.
Okay. First goal going to Dallas.
Yep.
Okay. Highest scoring period. We've got burned a couple times here. I feel like we got to go second period here.
Sure.
Okay. Miro Heiskanen, over under 1 assist on the night.
So he just needs an assist to hit the over?
An assist. Yeah, it's 0.5. Yeah.
Yeah, let's go. Sure.
Love it. Okay. Connor McDavid assists. Over 1.5 or under 1.5?
Let's go under.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Zach Hyman total goals. 1. Does he get it?
For picking Dallas to win, let's go under.
I love it. I love it. Wyatt Johnson total goals. Over under 1.
He's been clutch,
He has been clutch.
but
We're
also
picking them to win.
once. So do we? Yeah, let's double down.
Let's double down. I love it. Okay, total shots. I'll take this one. 57. We're going with. Okay, confirming the picks, and we are entered. We will see on Monday how we ended up doing. But folks, you can go play the game yourselves over at games.dailyfaceoff.com. Okay, let's get to it. Harm. It is the Ilya Mikheyev buyout segment, and it is brought to you by our friends over at 4Winds Brewing, more specifically 4Winds Featherweight. If you're looking for a nice hoppy beer but still want something light and flavorful, then look no further than the 4Winds Featherweight IPA. At just 4.5%, this incredibly light IPA is packed full of tropical and citrusy goodness. Available now at liquor stores across BC or through the 4Winds online shop for home delivery anywhere in BC at 4windsbrewing.ca. Okay, Harm, Ilya Mikheyev buyout. We said we'd talk about it, and we're here to talk about it. So, calculating the buyout of the remaining 2 years of Ilya Mikheyev's contract, you are going to be stuck with a cap hit for 4 years for Ilya Mikheyev, 1.15 million next season, 2.15 the next season after that, 1.55 after that, and then that final year in 2027, 1.55 again.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't think the cap math makes sense for the Canucks to do, especially because they already have Oliver Ekman-Larsson's dead cap charge in 2026-27, the 2027-28. To have Mikheyev on the books for those extra years, it just stings too much. And yeah, the savings are great this coming season, $3.6 million that you would save. But even the year after, you're saving 2.6, which is nice, but is that enough to justify having him on the books for 2 additional years where his contract would have otherwise expired? I don't think so, man, especially because OEL's buyout cap hit will ratchet up to nearly $4.8 million as of 2025-26. So I think it's too I think it's too difficult to do, especially because it's not just, oh, you save this amount of money. You also have to replace Mikheyev, right? So even if that's, let's say, $1 million to bring in a bottom 6 forward, that's still $1 million taken away from your savings. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you put those dead caps together, like that's a legit piece in terms of your cap, like in terms of your books. You put what Mikheyev's going to cost you in dead cap and Oliver Ekman-Larsson would cost you in dead cap, and you're looking at not being able to afford a player when you put them together.
Yeah, and this is where, for me, I would be much more open to the idea of the trade route as an exit option. That's the route that I think is a lot more fascinating and intriguing to dissect, because even if you have to retain a little bit of money, the benefit is it's only for this season and next, and you can still garner significant cap savings that way, right? Like Ilya Mikheyev at, let's say, whether it's a 3.5 or even a $3 million flat cap, maybe there's a team that looks at him and says, we think he could bounce back. That said, I think the parameters, as we discuss looking for an exit option via the trade market, number one, I don't want to pay a substantial sweetener from the Vancouver Canucks, right? Even if I can get the full freight of his $4.75 million cap hit off the books, I don't think it's worth it, just because the Canucks don't have a lot of expendable future assets. I mean, they already aren't picking until round 3 in this year's draft. Plus, you also have to account for they don't have a 3rd round pick in 2025, don't have a 3rd round pick in 2026. Not to mention, this team is going to need to continue adding to the roster, both in the offseason and presumably at the deadline if you're a buying, contending team again, right? So, for example, if you're making a big swing trade for Martin Necas or a Nick Ehlers, or pick your top line caliber winger for Elias Pettersson, unless you're using Nils Höglander as a centerpiece of the package, you're giving up picks primarily, or prospects. The Canucks don't have a lot of expendable ones where I don't want to be in the business of giving up like a second round pick and something else just to get Mikheyev's cap hit off, because you still have other business that you're going to need to get done. I mean, think about how many assets the Canucks had to part ways with over the last 18 months or so, right? To build the team that we saw last season. It was the picks that went out in the Hronek trade, the Sam Lafferty, the Nikita Zadorov, the Elias Lindholm. You only have so many bullets in your chamber, and that's where I would rather retain and have a scenario where I don't have to give up sweeteners, rather than a plan B scenario of you can get the full cap it off, but you're gonna have to pay for it.
Yeah, I'm looking around at it. Like earlier in the offseason, it felt like, yeah, it's a slam dunk. You've got to buy out Mikheyev. But now it just feels like when Patrick Allvin spoke at the end of season media avail, and he said things like, yeah, I think he's going to bounce back, and it's my fault that he was in a top 6 position, and it's not his fault. I think this team is kind of actually gearing up for Ilya Mikheyev to come back, and I think there might be a bounce back next year. Like, I don't think that's completely out of the question, but I think if you can make a trade happen, I don't think you're bouncing or counting on a bounce back in Vancouver. Like, if you can make a trade happen and it makes sense for you, I think you're pulling that off, but I don't think they're going to buy him out at the end of the day.
Yeah, whether it's, I mean, I'm not even really thinking they're going to consider the buyout route, but even if you're exploring the trade market, I still think it's more likely than not that Ilya Mikheyev is a Vancouver Canuck by the time next season starts. There are a few reasons for it. Number one, he's a 12-team no trade list. So automatically there, your potential trade partners are limited, especially if Dan Milstein is smart and strategic and being able to anticipate, hey, if Mikheyev wants to stay here, you can put teams on your no trade list strategically, right? If you think there are a few teams out there that, oh, they might have cap space and that's a less desirable location that I don't want to go to, you can put those teams on that list and sort of curate it. I mean, that's nearly half the league right there in 12 teams, right? So the other thing to keep in mind is I was looking at the UFA winger market, because the world in which there's a team that wants to roll the dice on Mikheyev, it would require there being a shortage of quality UFA options, right? So, for example, with the center market, it's quite possible that if a team is interested in NHL centers beefing up their middle six, they look at the slim pickings up the middle. They're not going to have many options. Not every team is going to be able to find the center that they're looking for, so they're going to turn to their trade market. But with the wingers, I see a pretty deep market, man. Like if you look on the left wing, for example, you've got Stamkos, Gensel, Adam Henrique, Anthony Mantha, Tyler Bertuzzi, Toivu Teravainen, Jason Zucker, Anthony Duclair, Warren Fogle, Max Pacioretty, Jordan Martinook, Will Carrier. Those are just some of the left wingers. I haven't even spoken about the right side that are poised to become unrestricted free agents on July 1st. So if you're a team looking for middle six winger help, I'm not sure that Mikheyev excites you relative to a lot of those other options.
Does Mikheyev excite you? Like keeping him around? Does that excite you at all?
No, it's something that I like. You just kind of have to live with. And in this discussion of will he bounce back or not, there are points in both the reason, like you can come up with decent reasons for why he will bounce back and decent reasons for why he won't. Right? It feels like equally probable scenarios, because like on the one hand, yes, he's going to put the ACL injury further in the rearview mirror. And that's fantastic, right? You think hopefully that can help bring his speed back. And from that perspective, like it is worth noting with NHL Edge data, Mikheyev, the season before he initially got hurt, so his last year in Toronto, because can't even talk about his first season as a Canuck because he's technically playing through that injury. We know he's one of the fastest players in the NHL. He was in the 95th percentile, so top 5% of all NHL forwards for speed bursts 20 miles per hour or over. This season, he was down to the 73rd percentile. Now, that may not seem like a huge drop off, but when you're Ilya Mikheyev and you don't have offensive creativity, you don't have high offensive IQ, like your game is all on your speed. So even a modest drop off can mean the world for a player like Mikheyev. So that was pretty prevalent. However, in the playoffs, there was a bounce back in his pace. In the playoffs, he was back towards the 89th percentile. So not fully to where he was with his speed pre-injury, but a lot closer. Now, you may say, well, his speed was back, the production didn't come. And that's true, but you also have to remember this is a guy that was stuck in what, like a 50 game, 55 game, almost 60 game where he'd scored just one goal. Like at a certain point, it's your finishing that then becomes the issue. And I know that Mikheyev has been a poor finisher for ever since he's come into the NHL, but it hasn't ever been that bad. So I can see a world in which he comes into training camp, he has something that more closely resembles his pre-injury speed, and most crucially, he has a reset mentally with his finishing. And not that all of a sudden he's going to be a high-end finisher, but he improves to being below average instead of he could have an open net and he's not burying it.
Yeah, like we saw that in the playoffs too. But all I'm going to say, you saying that NHL Edge data and the playoff speed burst improving, I'm thinking you are a little excited about Ilya Mikheyev going to. I think you have to be cautious
here. Like Ilya Mikheyev is like the opposite of exciting. You know what I mean? Like that's the feeling I've gotten watching him play. So
if he gets the breakaway, you know what move he's making. Like you're right. It's not exciting. You know what he's doing most of the time.
But if he does modestly bounce back, he can become a player that's not going to live up to that contract, but be a useful player for you. All he needs is to get closer to like the 15 goal, high 30s point range for him to be a semi-useful player. The other angle to remember is the Canucks may lose a number of penalty killing forwards this summer. Elias Lindholm, Teddy Bluger, Dakota Joshua. Especially if you lose a winger like Joshua. Mikheyev wasn't used a ton on the penalty kill. Maybe in part they wanted to manage his workload this past season, not put too much on his plate. But if you lose some penalty killers, all of a sudden Ilya Mikheyev was an above average penalty killer in Toronto, like legitimately useful there, had counterattacking speed, was a legit asset of his game. We haven't even really seen that emerge as a strength that he hasn't really gotten a consistent opportunity to do that. So he could even have value from that perspective of if you lose some of your PK forwards, could he be helpful? And this is where even when you look at Vancouver's winger depth chart in general, this is where Mikheyev, for example, his versatility to also play the right wing, like you may need it, right? Because I look at the right wing, you've got Brock Besser, you've got Connor Garland, and then after that, you don't have really any right wingers. Like the next right winger on the depth chart is Vasily Podkolzin, who we don't even know if he's capable of being an everyday NHL forward yet. Sam Lafferty's a UFA. Linus Karlsson is an RFA, and we don't know how he's going to feel in terms of staying in North America or potentially going back overseas. And then you get to like Lekaramaki and Klimovich on your right wing depth chart. So Mikheyev's ability to play that right wing, like that's a position where, yes, the Canucks, I'm sure will try and make some moves to upgrade on the flanks, but it's not like they're the deepest on the right wing. And so like I'm sure I'm also going to present like the cons, the pessimistic bear case view on why Mikheyev may not bounce back, but a lot of the reasons I just mentioned are the potential logic for why the Canucks may want to just hang on to him and give him another shot.
Alec Taylor in the YouTube live chat said Harman sounds excited.
I'm not excited. I don't know how many times I have to repeat this.
Okay, this is we'll close it on this because our poll question is bluntly just asking the listeners if the Canucks should buy out Mikheyev. Nathan Lee asked this one. Realistically, what would you get in a trade if you retain 1.5 million on Ilya Mikheyev?
So it'd be what, 3.25 million? I mean, you're still not really getting anything back. Right now, if you are talking a trade, there are different ways to view it. I mean, one would be the straight, we're just trying to clear his salary. We want the extra cap space to get work done. And yeah, you'd have to retain there. You could also look at a swap with a team that has a similar inefficient contract that they don't love, but maybe you think that player could be a better fit for you than Mikheyev. Now, I don't think that's the most likely scenario just because Mikheyev could have value for his penalty killing because the Canucks aren't deep on the wings anyway. But let's say there was hypothetically a bottom six center on another team that also made a little bit too much money for the next year or two. Maybe that other team wants to get out of that contract. They don't like the fit of that player anymore. Well, maybe the Canucks look at their center situation and go, we only have Miller and Pettersson signed. Yes, we're not gaining cap space, but it could be more efficiently allocated by acquiring a center and having it at a premium position where we have a need as opposed to on the wing.
Yeah. The poll question is about this very topic, Harm. The poll question is, of course, brought to you by Mr. Lube, and we bluntly asked it. We bluntly asked, should, not would, should the Canucks buy out Ilya Mikheyev? Right now, 69.2% of voters say no, 30.8% say yes. As we just spent the last 15, 20 minutes talking about, we also think that not only should they not buy out Mikheyev, but they likely won't buy him out either.
Yeah, I just to present a couple more notes on this whole Mikheyev discussion, not in relation to the buyout, but overall, the will he bounce back and just dissecting the situation as a whole. First, I do think it was interesting. There's a study from 2016, so not the newest, but I'm trying to pull it up here. Yeah, so here it goes. ACL injuries in professional hockey players. This this study took a look at players' performance before and after ACL injuries. And on average, it found that, of course, full season before injury, players' average point totals were a lot higher than their first full season after the injury. I was curious about the second full season after injury because you'd think, okay, maybe it's going to bounce back. Interestingly, on average, and again, this isn't a prediction of what's going to happen with Mikheyev, but on average, the forwards actually their point totals continued declining the next year after, which I thought was interesting. I expected a little bit of a modest bounce back, not a bounce back to a player's pre-injury production level, but something compared to the first year. And no, there's actually another slight drop off in year two. Again, this is an older study, so it doesn't mean this is the most likely scenario with Mikheyev, but I thought it was worth looking at. There are also a couple of recent examples I can think of off the top of my mind that sort of fit this criteria, right? I mean, Antoine Roussel, as we know, was never the same after he tore his ACL. I also look at Tom Wilson in and around the same age range. So he had 52 points, 24 goals in the 2021-22 season, tore his ACL after that. He came back the following season and missed most of it. Closed out with 22 points in 33 games. His play driving numbers had taken a big hit, but he still scored 13 goals in 33 games. It wasn't the biggest drop off necessarily in his offensive production. This past season would be considered his his second season after that ACL injury, returning from it. only had 35 points and 18 goals in 74 games. And I don't know if you watched him in the playoffs. He had 3 points, but just he didn't look as impactful. Like you can tell Tom Wilson doesn't look the same as he did pre-injury. And he's at it now a long time to put that torn ACL in the rearview mirror.
That's really interesting. And I like that you brought up that study because I was thinking about past examples as well. And obviously, Roussel is the main one that comes to mind. But Tom Wilson, that's a good pull, Harm. That's a really good pull.
Now, just to show that it's not always doom and gloom and that it's a guarantee that once you tear your ACL, your career is basically done as a top 9 forward. Zach Hyman would be an example of a positive scenario. I believe he tore his ACL around 2020, and we know that he hasn't skipped a beat and still being an impactful top six player. I remember being a little bit concerned because he was dealing with the ACL injury and he was hitting free agency. And I was thinking, is the team going to sign him and potentially overpay? And maybe he's not the same. And yet for Edmonton, he's been one of the best free agent signings in of the last decade.
Yeah, I mean, stand in front of the net. You're not skating much. No, he does look good too. So, yeah, that's a good pull of the other direction. And that was our poll question brought to you by Mr. Lube. Need a tire change or tire service? Mr. Lube provides no appointment tire service and sales. Drop by anytime for tire rotation, tire repair, and balancing, servicing all makes and models, including electric vehicles. Find them at one of their 16 locations in the Lower Mainland. For one near you, go to mrlube.com. Okay. Let's get to, can we get to anyone else now? Because I think we can. Oh, no. Let's do a quick word from the BC government, and then we will get to anyone else. So get your anyone else's in, folks.
Time now for a word from helpstartshere.gov.bc.ca. Everybody knows about the overdose crisis, also known as the toxic drug crisis, but what's less known is that the stigma around addiction makes it harder to ask for help, and that's got to stop. Addiction is a complex health condition, not a choice, and that means people shouldn't have to face judgment at work or from their loved ones or fear the law. But shame and stigma can cause a person to hide their drug use or use alone, and we don't want that. People shouldn't be afraid to reach out. There are supports available, and it can help to know where to start. The government of BC is partnering with organizations like the Nation Network to help extend this message throughout our province. If you or someone you care about is struggling, you can find supports and services near you at helpstartshere.gov.bc.ca.
All right, let's get to anyone else. Brought to you by the Vancouver Canadians. Canadians baseball is back at the Nat. Catch fireworks, giveaways, Friday news, and superstar appearances all spring and summer long. Get your tickets at canadiansbaseball.com. A record 33 giveaways this season, 6 koozies giveaways for the first 6 Saturdays of the season from all their beer partners, and a giveaway every Sunday for Family Fun Sunday for kids 12 and under. Don't miss the nooner at the Nat this weekend, folks. Make sure you get out to the Nat. Enjoy the sun and watch some great professional baseball. Go to canadiansbaseball.com to get your tickets or call 604-872-5232. All right, let's get to anyone else. Next playoffs. I like this from Alec Taylor. Next playoffs, the Canucks walkout song should be Sabotage by the Beastie Boys. I kind of like that. I think it fits their play style a little bit, right? Like they're there to sabotage how other teams play. What? You don't know that song?
I mean, maybe if it played out loud, I would know it, but if you just say the song name, nothing comes to mind originally.
The only lyric I know from that song is Sabotage, and then it has a really cool guitar riff. Does that ring a bell? Did that help?
No, that did not help.
All right, next time we go to karaoke, I'll have to sing it for you because I thought I sung it pretty well just there. But yeah, I can't believe you don't know that song. That's the thing. Later in the off season, we should just have a segment where it's things that you and I don't know, because you and I, like, we don't watch many movies. We don't know a ton of old TV shows. Evidently, a ton of old music as well. We don't know all that. You know who the Beastie Boys are, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, this one from Andreas Schaub. If you had the choice, between Zadorov at 6x6 or Lindholm at 6x7, who do you take? I'm gonna say Lindholm because I think you can move that contract. I think it's a more valuable contract to move.
Can I say neither? Like those are both bad contracts. I think Lindholm's is slightly more palatable, but I don't think Lindholm's worth 7 million either. And we'll do a Lindholm. You know what? We should do an episode next week just diving into Lindholm and Zadorov. They're like projecting what they might cost in the next deals. Are they worth keeping? Just really going deep on those guys. But yeah, at those prices, I would say neither.
Okay, so I did over at Canucks Army. I did a walk away price article where I looked at what the Canucks should walk away from for each of their 11 free agents. And I had Lindholm at a 7x7. If that's what Lindholm wants and that's the only thing he'd come back to Vancouver for, I think the Canucks should walk away from that. But a 6x7, if I have to pick between a 6x6 for Zadorov and a 6x7 for Lindholm, I don't know. I think you can move that like pretty quickly if you wanted to. Because yes, I agree with you. The Canucks don't need Lindholm, right? And they definitely have more of a need for Zadorov on their roster than they do Lindholm, especially at that cap hit. But I think around the league, you can move Lindholm. Like you can move that contract.
Probably. Sure.
Maybe
Yeah.
I mean,
I would immediately flip into Boston.
Oh man. Okay. Good question. I like that. That got some this got some discussion going. Okay, this one. 7th Street Dream. Would you consider a high risk trade with Hronek if the contract gets too high, like for a package with an unproven high ceiling prospect like Juracek? Benefit would be the cap savings to get other free agents. I say unequivocally yes. Like if you're offered Philip Hronek for one of those high end guys that you believe in, like Juracek's maybe not a bad example because I think everybody believes in Juracek. Like I still think the Jackets obviously believe in Juracek still. I would definitely pull off that trade. Like for Hronek 1-for-1, absolutely.
Yeah, teams don't really trade blue chip prospects anymore like that though. You know what I mean?
No.
It just doesn't happen, especially think it through. Why would, if you have a prospect that has a decent chance of turning into a top 4 defenseman relatively soon, he's going to be young, he's going to be cost controlled. Why would you give up on that deep prospect to acquire a guy that, yeah, he's proven, but is also going to be infinitely more expensive on a contract that you may not like?
Okay, so let's tweak the question a little bit. Like, let's make it more high risk because Juracek wasn't a good example. No offense to the listener, because this is a great question. This is a great question for us to discuss. So no disrespect, of course, to the listener who brought it up. But Harm, let's say we're not talking about blue chip. Let's go B prospect. Would you make a trade for Hronek where it's like you're getting, I don't know, like a 3rd round pick instead of a 2nd, and you're getting a B level prospect that you can then go put in Abbotsford and hope that the development staff can turn it into something for you? I say yes. You're getting those cap savings. You're getting a draft pick that you can either use or it's capital that you can later flip for something else that you need during the season. I say yeah. Like I would do that if I believe enough in the B level prospect that you're getting and the difference is only between a 2nd or a 3rd round pick. I would do that.
Perhaps. I think the best case, put it this way, if I was shopping Hronek, well, first and foremost, I would need a succession plan. I would, in my mind, need to know who is going to be the partner for Quinn Hughes next season. Who am I going to find, not just to play with Quinn, but also like to be an offensive defenseman stylistically, right? So A, I would need to be comfortable with that. B, in a perfect world, and this may not be possible, but I'd be trying to find a top 6 winger to trade Hronek for. Right now, we threw around Natchez, probably not the route that Carolina is going to go down, given how careful they are about handing out big term and big dollars to defensemen. Like they hate giving these big expensive contracts unless they're for young players who are in their prime, like the Sebastian Aho types, right? Think about it this way. They let Dougie Hamilton walk after Hamilton finished top 10 in Norris voting, right? That shows you how ruthless they are. But another example, a team like Ottawa could be interested in a right shot defenseman. I was just on a podcast with a Senators media member, Alex Adams, who was sort of asking me about Hronek and thought of Hronek as a player that the Sens might be interested in. And I was like, great, I would love Drake Batherson, right? Batherson is locked up for at least, I believe, through 2027-28 at a sub $5 million cap hit, like 4.95 or something. He's fast, he's dynamic, he's capable of putting up 60 points. That would be the perfect scenario. But again, is that realistic? If I'm Ottawa, I'm not doing that trade just because of the contract disparity, right? Is Hronek, am I even going to be able to, if I'm Ottawa, sign Hronek to a contract? A, like, is he going to want to stay here? And B, even if he does, do you really want to pay $8 million for it? So then if, let's say, a top 6 winger isn't possible, then yeah, you consider your check down options and you may ultimately have to settle for future assets.
I like it. Drew Magus in the chat. Yeah, everyone lets Dougie Hamilton walk, though.
True, but
your point stands. You don't need to explain it. Your point absolutely stands, because we've seen that with them before. They've been not shy, but they've been unwilling to hand out that big money, and they don't have that star player, right? And they're careful with it.
Even Vinny Trocheck, right? Carolina's been hunting for that second line center. They had one in Trocheck, but because he was hitting the market in his later 20s, not even that old, but Trocheck would have commanded a long-term deal. They were like, we're not doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, there's a few listener questions in
by the way.
Sorry?
What a great contract for the Rangers, though, hey?
Oh my God, yeah.
We're like, great free agent signing.
Yeah, and what he's doing right now, too. Like, yeah. Okay, there's other ones here. This one, let's answer this one, Harm. Andreas Schaub, what's the max the Canucks should pay for Chris Tanev in free agency?
I don't honestly have a number off the top of my head. I'd really need to dive deep because of his age, because of his injury history. It's not so much the cap hit, it's the term as well. Like, what's his cap hit right now? Is it like 4.5?
Yes. Yes, it is. I will look it up just to make sure, but I think it's exactly that. Yeah, 4.5. And he turns 35.
That's not the issue for me. I $5 million. Exactly. That's the term, right? I don't want to sign him for 4 years, for example, because I'm worried about how that contract is going to age. Tanev's a tough one, because as much as I want him.
Sorry, continue.
I was just going to say Tanev's a tough one just because he's been boosting his stock in the playoffs. I know he's had a rough game or two against Edmonton, but he was having one of the best runs that we've ever seen from a shutdown defenseman in the playoffs through the first 2 rounds. He went up against Eichel's line and Mark Stone's line primarily. Eichel and Stone play on separate lines. In round 1 against Vegas, Tanev didn't surrender a single 5-on-5 goal against in that series. Dominated from a territorial perspective. Stars outscored Vegas 5-0 in those minutes with Tanev on the ice. He played the equivalent of 3.5 periods against Nathan MacKinnon head-to-head at 5-on-5 in the second round against the Avalanche. The Stars outscored Dallas 3-1 in those head-to-head minutes between Tanev and MacKinnon. A run like that, I worry about how much it's going to boost his stock and how many bidders there are going to be.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. On July 1. Okay, let's get to our Bet365 bet of the day, brought to you by Bet365, a proud partner of Canucks Conversation. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets, whatever the sport, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code VANBONUS when you sign up for an account. Harm, if we picked it in the daily face-off playoff parlay challenge, we're also going to pick it in the Bet365 bet of the day. We are taking the home team, the Dallas Stars, to win tonight in any fashion. at minus 130 odds over at Bet365. Must be 19 plus to play. If you choose to play, please play responsibly. We'll close it out there. We'll be back on Monday. And like you said, Harm, we have to have a whole episode about Elias Lindholm, and we'll have a lot more conversations coming next week. But we'll close it out for this edition of Canucks Conversation. For my co-host Harman Dial and our technical producer Grady Fass, my name is David Pagelli. Thank you so much for listening to the episode of the Canucks Conversation.
Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.